Brother Al.
Hallelujah.
Can you hear me over the microphone?
Yes. Yes.
All right. I'll leave it up to the audio man to turn me up if he can, because I've got a limited amount of throat this morning. The reason being, I've been pretty much lying flat on my back since Labor Day. Took a real bad fall. However, I'd like to go back to about a year ago when I came over here. Lord had given me a dream about a fire truck a couple of years before, and I was the fire truck. And my fire truck had a flat tire on the right rear, and it was jacked up. And I was told that I needed to take my fire truck to the Bentonville city shop where they fix the equipment for the city. And so I drove the truck there with the jack right under it. And I got there and they said, no, well, we can't fix the flat until you go dump the hay that we see in the back bed. And so they told me how to find a place to dump the hay. This is all in a dream now. And by the way, if God doesn't bless you with dreams, you need to read Job 33 and get one of the blessings that you're not allowing yourself to have. God has directed me by dreams for 53 plus years. I made a move to Baton Rouge, the town that people were talking about this morning. God sent me there on 3 dreams. I didn't want to go. I was up in Lincoln, Nebraska. And God gave me this dream, and I woke up and realized, thank you, brother. I forgot to ask you for that. I said, Lord, I don't want to, that sure sounds like Louisiana. I don't want to go. Nothing good ever happened to me in Louisiana. I was born and raised there. But bad things happened to me in Louisiana. I didn't want to go. So I had another dream, and it looked like Louisiana again. I said, God, I really don't want to go to Louisiana. And so I just shrugged it off. I didn't want to go. So then he gave me a third dream. And in that dream, I saw, you've seen these African pictures where they got the huts up on these poles. Mm-hmm. When I saw that, I knew that it was Louisiana. It rains a lot down in Louisiana. One thing I hated about it was just so damp down there. But after the third dream, I said, okay, God, I'll go. And this is not the lesson I've got prepared, and I'm going to come back next Sunday and deliver that for you, okay? I'll be on my feet more. My throat should be better. I just wanted to kind of tell you a little bit about myself, about what God has done. Anyway, after I decided that, okay, God, I'll go. I made a vow a long time ago, and I said, God, whatever you ask me to do, I'll do it. Anyway, after a few days, after that third dream, I told the Lord I would go. The telephone rings. I'm in the two-way radio shop in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm an electronic technician by trade. The phone rings, and the call is from Chicago. And this guy called me. His name is Jim Harvey. And he said, Al, he said, you may not remember me, but he said, I met you down in Baton Rouge at one of our Motorola meetings. He said, you were at my shop. I said, yes, sir. He said, I hear you're going to Louisiana. I said, how in the world did you hear I was coming to Louisiana? I didn't even remember the man. I remember going to his shop, but I didn't remember him. Well, he said, your name's being floated around here, that you're headed down there. And I heard about it. And I'd like for you to come to work for me when you get down here. Wow. I said, well, sir, I appreciate the offer and everything. But I'm headed for Alexandria. That's about almost 200 miles north of Baton Rouge. Well, he said, if you change your mind, he said, I got a job for you. I said, okay. So I wrote down his name and phone number. Gave my notice on my job, loaded got my kids out of school if they were in school, loaded a U-Haul truck up. This wasn't the first time this happened to me. It was the first time for Louisiana. First time anything like this had happened. So we get down to Alexandria, and if I'd have been a millionaire, I couldn't have bought a job. Every place I went, somebody had just got the job. And I only had a certain number of days left on my U-Haul truck where I had to turn it in. And I didn't have any money left. I'd used it all renting a truck and getting down there. Just had maybe enough for rent a house when I got here. So there was one opportunity left, and that was that there's a paper mill in Pineville, Louisiana, right next to Alexandria. I don't know if any of you have ever been down that way. And I have experience in electrical work too. And I was a foreman, electrical foreman at a hose plant in Galesburg, Illinois. So I had the experience. So I go down. So I go to the plant. They had an opening for electrician. So I go down there and I go in, and my time is running out. I got a little bit more than 24 hours left to turn that truck in. I don't have any money for any extra days. So I go in there, and the guy says, well, he'll see you in a little bit. Wait over here. So I sat down there, and the guy heads off down the hall. And so I said, Satan, you're just wasting my time. Tell you what, devil, I'm just going to pray while I'm waiting. I leaned my head down on my chin and my knee, my arms, elbows on my knees, and I could kind of see the guy leaving down the hall. And I started praying, and that man made a U-turn. He didn't walk back, he ran back to where I was at. He said, the boss will see you right now. He hadn't even gone to see him. It was Satan working against me, trying to kill all what little time I had left, so I went in the end to get jobs filled, just like all the rest. I said, all right, Lord, I'll go to Baton Rouge. That's way down south compared to Alexandria. So we get down there, and it's the night before, and I'm at my brother's house. And I tell my wife, I said, we got 24 hours to drive to Baton Rouge, talk to the boss about accepting the job, finding a house, at least getting the stuff in one of the rooms and turning that truck in. 24 hours is all I had. So I told my wife, I said, we got to pray. Now my wife has an ability in the spirit that any prophet would be just about willing to die for. She can go into a trance and go back into your life and see you at your old house and tell you things that you've forgotten. And you'll even think she's wrong, and when you think about it, well, yes, she's right, and I was wrong. My memory's not that good. First time she did it, she saw me. I was about 7 years old, sitting in a sand pile. You can tell her, go in the house and tell me what you see, and she can do it. You can say, go across the street and go up the trail. Why do you tell me what you see? It will blow your boat out of the water, I'm telling you. So anyway, we got down to pray, and she says, I see a hand, and it's picking up a board. And I see the number 5 on one end and 4 on the other. And the hand was covering up whatever was in between. So I said, all right, that's all we had. Next morning we get up early, get in the truck. We head on down there. I meet the boss, agree to take the job. And I told him, I says, what the problem was is, listen, I said, I've only got so much time. We got to find a house. So being a two-way radio business that I was at, he sends all of his guys out in their trucks. Everybody's got a two-way radio where they can call back in. Says, going to drive it up and down the streets to hunt for a house for rent. So my wife says, you know what, we might as well go look too. We ain't got nothing else to do. I said, you're right. So we get in the car, head out. She says, there's a garbage truck. Let's follow it. It'll be going down through neighborhoods. Oh, that's a great idea. I said, okay, we'll follow that garbage truck. So we got behind that truck and it goes through this neighborhood after street. And lo and behold, over on the side we see a big old white house with a sign out front for rent. Write down the phone number, go find the telephone. And I called this lady. Her name is Mrs. Smith, by the way. That's really her name. And I tell her, I says, we see this house over here. I said, I need one quick. She said, well, tell you what. She said, I've got a rent house right next to me, next door. She said, a Baptist preacher just moved out of it. And she said, he left it real clean. She said, I think you'd probably like that house better. I said, okay, give me the address. It was 5014 Clayton Street.
Five 4.
5014 Clayton. First house we ever moved in that we rented, it was clean and ready to move in with it. My wife wouldn't have to clean it. What I'm trying to tell you is that God sent me.
Yeah.
We were there for 3 solid years. We were there in 4 different works. And because God sent me, miracles happened.
Amen.
Amen.
I had this name. I don't remember where I got it. My throat's turned out to be better than I figured it was, brother. I don't remember where I got it, but his name was M.J. Davis. And no one knew the guy, but I had the name. So we were out driving around and we saw this church over here. Name on the sign was Virgil Davis, pastor. So I told my wife, you know what, let's just go there for a while till we find out where this M.J. Davis is at. His name's Davis, at least we got part of it. So we went there. This was that UPC church I told y'all about at that Storm Ladies meeting. We stayed there a while, and the man had been seeking God for spiritual gifts. And so we worked with him a while, and worked with him until he went to St. Louis, Missouri, to the headquarters, and somebody turned off his desire for spiritual gifts. And when he come back, he was a totally different man. I realized, well, my work is over here. One of these days I might have time to tell you about what happened there. We still didn't know where M.J. Davis was, so went to this independent church. And this man had been pastoring for years, Brother Rudy. And he had gotten the idea that he had worked so long for God, and now it was time for God to work for him. And he rents this building, and he gets him these boxes, and he sets these boxes on these grocery store parking lots. Christian school, donate. People would throw their clothes and all sorts of things, and he would sell them in this store. And he bought him a Lincoln Continental, and he said you'd go the drive ticket the long way home when you drive a Lincoln Continental. And he built him a house. All with that money that he got. People donated for a Christian school, and he's using it to buy his car and build him his house. One night I was praying for the church. At least I got in the pulpit in that church, brother. I never got in the pulpit in the first. One night I was praying and God spoke to me and He said, I'm going to remove my candlestick from the church. I said, okay, Lord. So the next time I went to church, He asked me to lead the testimony service. Well, I believe in testimonies, and I believe in telling what God has done for you and all that, but a program deal of just everybody standing up, trying to think of something to say, that never has fit me very good. And I just didn't like being called on to lead the testimony service to start with, because I knew later he's going to call me on me to preach too. So I decided, well, now's the time to tell them what God told me. So I went up to the pulpit and I said, folks, I said, God told me that He's going to remove the candlestick from this church. I did. I told them. That's what God told me is, hey, I'm not supposed to make up my own stuff. I'm supposed to say what God said. That's the Word of God, same as this was. He spoke to me. So I told them. So then, of course, I knew I was done. So I sit down. And of course, he gets up there and he says, folks, he says, I believe Brother Al's a man of God. I just believe he missed. It just so happened, God sent M.J. Davis to the church that night. He was sitting in the pew. I didn't even know yet he was there. I got introduced to him afterward. But, I knew I was done. So, anyway, every member of that church got up and justified themselves and all the stuff that was going on, except for one man. His name was Brother Lawson. So we left. I introduced to Brother this M.J. Davis and went over to work in his church. And within a month or two later, my wife and I were driving down the street there in Baton Rouge somewhere, and there was this fellow walking on the sidewalk, same way we were going. She looks at him, she says, I believe that's Brother Lawson. He was kind of stumbling along like, he had too much to drink. So I pulled on ahead, pulled over to the side, and I got out, and as he approached me, I come and looked at him. I says, is that you, Brother Lawson? His lips was green. I guess that happened when you drink wine. I don't know. I've never drank wine, but anyway, he looks up at me. He's Brother Milligan. I said, yeah. I realized he was Brother Lawson. He said, you know what you told us before you left? I said, yeah, I remember, brother. He said, what happened just like you said. He said, everybody's gone. Just like you said. So we loaded him up in the car and brought him to some brother's house to get help for him. And now we're working at this third work in Baton Rouge. Remember, God sent me down there. I didn't want to go. But up to that point, everything that I had said, God did. Not one word fell to the ground at that point. And I was ministering. Of course, when I got to Brother Davis's church, he was so hungry for help that every time the pulpit opened, I taught Sunday school, I preached Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday. God must have blessed his throat because it was bad back then, not as bad as it is now. The story of my throat is another deal, how it happened and why God hadn't healed it all this time and why He's in the process of now giving it back to me. That's another longer story. But anyway, I want to tell you a couple of things that happened there and then a thing that happened in the church after that. And I guess the reason I'm telling you all of this, and God told me that I needed to tell you folks this, is because, excuse me, He wants you to know that when He sends a man out to do His work, He upholds what He says and He gives him His word. And He confirms the word with signs and wonders. It is time to believe it because it's coming to this body of Christ. Right away. It's not going to wait. It's coming.
Amen.
And I've got the doctrine to back it up. to show you that God is fixed to send you a Solomon ministry. The things that's going to happen in the millennial kingdom that's going to happen in this place.
Hallelujah.
Amen.
Write it down on your calendar that Brother Al told you that. So when it comes to pass, you know that God said what He's going to do.
Yes.
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you.
I was preaching one night, and like I'm doing now, I can't stand still for some reason. And I had come to this side of the pulpit, to the platform, and I was headed back to the other side. And all at once, it was as though a giant hand just reached into my chest and just jerked my strength out of me. I almost fell on my face. But I knew what had happened. I knew that virtue, like Jesus said, had gone out of me. And I knew somebody had gotten healed. So I stopped. I couldn't do much else. I didn't want to have any energy to talk. And I told the congregation, I said, somebody who just got healed. Somebody just got healed. No one knew. So I said, well, we got to know who's healed. I said, everybody come line up at the altar. There must have been 30 people there. And they all lined up from one end to the other. And I told them, I said, I'm going to start here on one end. I'm going to lay hands on each one of you. And when I get to the person that God has healed, God's going to tell me. And I don't know where I got that from, brother. I never done anything like that before. And God didn't tell me that ahead of time. He didn't tell me what happened. I didn't have a dream it was going to happen anything like that. I just said it. So I started on one end. Laid my hand on this one. Just kept it going. I got about 3/4 of the way down and I laid my right hand on this sister. Her name was Sister Lou. I laid my hand on her head. And just as I touched her, my whole left arm went dead. Just as numb as can be. I took my hand off, my arm was all right. Put my right hand back, my arm went numb again. I said, Sister Lou, what does it mean? I said, your left arm ever go numb? She said, yes, sir, it does. I said, what causes it, Sister Lou? She said, I got a bad heart. And that caused it. I said, Sister Lou, your heart's healed. You don't have a bad heart anymore. It's done. It's healed. She was older than my mother at the time. She's probably in 80s. Real elderly, sweet little sister. Excuse me. So God healed her. She threw away her medicine. Well, the pastor of that church died. M.J. Davis died. And I left. All I knew to then was, the people were scattering, so I rented a building down there. It was a Assembly of God building. They had moved out, built a new building, and that was for rent, so I went and rented it. And Sister Lou came, and a family by the name of Lamberts came. And we'd been there a while. And because God had healed her heart so well, I don't know where she got the doctrine, but she went around telling people this is sin to go to a doctor. And I didn't know that. And God got me teaching, we're in grace. We're not under law. You can go to the doctor if you want to. You can have a Christmas tree if you want to. You can give gifts if you want to. We're not under the law. Sin's a transgression of the law, and there's nothing in the law that says you can't go to a doctor. And I was preaching, at every service. I was teaching the people, look, folks, we're in grace. I didn't know what was going on. I just was saying what God gave me. So one night she comes up for prayer. She says, Brother Al, she says, I need you to pray for my leg. I said, what's the matter with your leg, Sister Lou? She says, it's got a rash on it. She says, it's real bad. So I prayed for her rash, and God didn't heal it. Every service she come, I kept praying for her leg. God wouldn't heal her leg. It's first thing since I'd been down there that God wouldn't do what I was asking Him. So I come to church one night and I was praying in the prayer room before service. And Sister Lou rode with the Lamberts. She's an elderly lady. She's too old to drive and all. And God spoke to me and He says, there's trouble coming in the Lambert's car. I said, okay, God. So started service and just got her started good, and they were sitting over at this part, and suddenly God told me. I said, Sister Lambert, Sister Lou. I said, you got a daughter? She said, yes, sir. I said, you've been trying to get your daughter to come to church? She says, yes, sir. I said, you've been telling your daughter to sin, to go to a doctor? She said, yes, sir. I said, well, sister, that's why she hadn't come. She's afraid to come. I mean, I was gentle. I wasn't chewing her out or anything. I was just telling her what God was telling me. So she goes home. A couple nights later, I get a phone call. She says, Brother Al. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, my leg's getting really bad. She said, my daughter really wants me to go to the doctor. She said, what do you think? I said, sister, I've been telling you night after night what I think. Go to the doctor. But when you go, don't you let the devil tell you that you sinned by going to the doctor.
That's right.
So her daughter takes her to the doctor. Finds out she's got impetigo. Whatever that is, some kind of rash, I guess. She gets the pills, but don't just a salve or something, but she doesn't do anything with it. She just got it. The next service was on Wednesday night. She came back on that Wednesday night. I said, Sister Lou, did you go to the doctor? She said, yes, sir. I said, what's wrong with you, Sister Lou? She said, I've got impetigo. I said, Sister Lou, and all at once I got anointed. I said, God said, He's going to heal your legs so fast that you're going to know that it was Him that healed it. And you're going to know that it's not a sin to go to a doctor by that. Next service, Sister Lou's back again. I said, Sister Lou, did God heal your leg? She said, yes, sir. I said, Sister Lou, how long did it take for God to heal your leg? She said, about 8 hours. Completely dried up.
I love it.
In 8 hours. One night I had left the kitchen getting a drink of water, headed back to the bedroom. We had a little dog that had distemper. I don't know if they got a cure for it now, but back then, that was back in the early 70s, they didn't have any cure for distemper. The dog would die of distemper. And the dog was having one of his fits when I come by him, and I just leaned over, put my hand on him, went back to bed. Wife was talking about, what about the dog? My girls, I got 4 daughters. They were all pretty young still. She talked about the dog. She says, well, what are we going to do about the dog? I told her to forget the dog. God healed the dog. The dog died of something else. Never had another attack. All that time, 3 solid years, not one word of what God gave me to do fell to the ground. God did everything. And when the time come to leave there, He said, you got to go back to Lincoln, Nebraska. Boy, that was good news for me. I didn't want to go there to start with. So you got to go back to Lincoln, Nebraska. I said, okay, God, I'll go. I didn't argue this time. So gave my notice, got all loaded up and went to Lincoln, Nebraska. Got there, moved into a house, got all settled. What am I going to do now, Lord? He didn't tell me anything, no dream or anything. So I told the wife, let's get in the vehicle, start driving around, see if we can find a place. God must be wanting me to start a church or something because I didn't know anything else. So we're driving around, and lo and behold, we see this sign on the corner. Used to be an old theater, wasn't it, Brother Doug? Where's Brother Doug? Wasn't that what it was?
I really don't know what it was before.
Huh?
I don't know what it was before.
It had 3 sets of seats, one center aisle and over here. And there were less than 20 people there, including the pastor. And the sign said, Temporary Home of Solid Rock Youth Center. And so I figured, well, if it's temporary, maybe they're fixing to move out. Looks like a good place to have a church. So I wrote down the phone number, go back home, and I called the phone number. And this girl with the name of Ann answers the phone. I guess she was at the church at the time, at the building. And I tell her, I says, you folks going to be moving out pretty soon? I said, I'm looking for a building to rent, start a church in. No, she says, we just put that there because we don't know what the future holds. She said, well, why don't you come and visit us? I said, okay. I'll see you tonight. It was church night. So I get there, and of course they know I'm a preacher because of what I told her. So the pastor invites me to come get in the pulpit. So I preached for him that night. And I come back, and every night, every Sunday morning, every service, he just starts the service, turns it over to me. We've been there probably a month or two. And one night, someone came up for prayer, and I just reached and touched their head. God slew them in the spirit. And one by one they came up, and God slew every person in the church, except for my wife was sitting with the kids. Everybody else went down. I didn't push anybody, just touch them. And I guess the news of that spread or something. In 90 days later, there was standing room only in that place. There had to be well over 100 seats. God filled that place up. News spread around that Brother Al had got these people baptized, changed their doctrine. Of course, my doctrine wasn't that correct back then. I still had some old UPC stuff that was incorrect. But anyway, they had received what I had. God had seemed to ignore it. When doing it, did it anyway. And that, of course, once the building filled up, I became an enemy, and pretty quick I was disfellowshipped and asked to leave. The old lie that had been following me for years came there too. Brother Al's out after your saints. Hallelujah. It could come here. That lie could come here, brother.
No.
When you hear it, you just rebuke them in the name of Jesus.
Amen.
I know what my ministry is. It's not sheep stealing. Hallelujah. Anyway, when I was here a year ago, when you folks prayed for me, and I want to really thank you for, I went 8 months as though I didn't have a back problem whatsoever.
Wonderful. Amen.
Y'all prayed the prayer of faith.
Amen.
And God did a miracle work on my back. This past Labor Day, I was hooking for a light bulb, and I climbed up on the counter off of a chair, reached my foot, got my mind on something. You do that when you get to be a senior citizen. You just kind of have the moments where you just don't even think anymore, like a kid, you run out in the street. I reached my right foot down to get back on my chair, and I remember feeling the chair, but I didn't know it was sitting on the right edge of the chair, and I let go and my full weight on it. And I fell from that high all the way down on my tailbone. And oh, you're talking about hurting, it hurt. Anyway, if you could see the x-rays of the before and after, the chiropractor told my son Jim, I really can't see hardly any difference at all. I expect to see crushed discs all over. Angel of God must have been in my back, holding me together.
Yes.
Amen. Now, that's just a little bit of history on Brother Al. And last Sunday, Brother Jim, my son, thought he was just going to take a motorcycle ride. He thought he had chosen to come out here. And he didn't know it at the time, but God sent him out here.
Wow.
And he gets here and waits a while and has dinner, well, I guess with you folks or something, and waits around for Brother Rudy to show up. Brother Rudy shows up and he visited with him a while, and Brother Rudy sends me an invitation to come. And while Jim was telling me about the need of this youngster that has the inoperable tumor, while he's telling me that, I receive a burden. I call it a love burden. 53 years ago and a half or so ago, when I found the Lord, I had a burden that was so heavy. It was, if I was awake, I was aware of it. It was like I was packing a heavy load. And I would pray and cry and pray and cry. And after a while, I said, God, you got to take it away. At least lighten this load. I just can't keep carrying it. So he did. That quick. Then I felt like I was backslid. Took me a year asking to trying to get it back and never did get it back. Instead I got a burden for the Word. And I guess I went through a period of time where I wouldn't study as much as God wanted me to study, and I began to feel like, Lord, where are you? I'm sure everybody here's that's happened to you, but where are you at, Lord? So I found a spot in the basement of the church I was attending. Got there one night, all by myself. I was the only one in the whole building. I got down in the corner. I said, God, I'm staying here till you tell me what's wrong. A few minutes later, I knew I wouldn't spend enough time in the Word.
That's right.
And that's been my burden all these years.
Know that burden.
You may study an hour. For every hour you study, I probably study 4 or 5. I've studied as high as 10 hours a day at a time. It's a magnet.
It is.
It's a ministry of searching for the faith that was once delivered to the saints. Saints of God, I've got barns full of truths that the church has lost.
Yeah.
The things that God has shown me will blow you away. And I know that God didn't give me that for me. It's not just for me. Why would He give it to me just for me? He gave it to me for you and for thousands of other people around the planet. Because God is fixing to move His people into a powerhouse of miracles and signs and wonders. They're going to need the doctrines that I have received. Jim's had dreams about it. Sprouting up all over the United States. Got the dream and interpretation among several that he's received. He's going to be carrying this ministry that God is giving to me. But when he began to tell me about that youngster, there was this a live and die situation. That old burden that I had thought would never come back. Almost 53 years later, it came back for an instant. And along with it came the words, bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. And that's the message I was going to deliver to you this morning. I was expecting that family to be here. And I had full confidence that had they been here, Brother Rudy, they would have gone home with that young man healed. Because God sent me. He sent me here. A year ago when Brother Rudy asked me to come to help teach, I said, God, all this time I've been waiting for, this is going away a little at a time. And it's not here yet. This is early for me because I wasn't expecting it this quick. And I told Brother Rudy why I hadn't come back. This throat of mine. And I explained to him that I finally found the cure. And it has to do with that fire truck I told you about. But anyway, this love burden dropped back on me after right at 53 years ago. And I heard the words, like I said, bear you one another's burdens. And that was the sending. I knew when I heard that God was saying, I'm sending you. And the reason I didn't want to come without being sent was because I knew that if God sent me, so would He give you miracles and signs and wonders.
That's right.
I don't play church. It's real to me.
Amen. Amen.
Lives, souls are at stake. People's health, their lives, their souls, their children's, their grandchildren, everybody's at stake. It's nothing to play with. It's nothing to take lightly. It's serious business. We're on this planet so that God can prepare us to live with Him eternally. I love my Jesus. I want to live with Him eternally. And Lord willing, you pray for me. Pray for this throat. I'll be back next week. And I'll deliver to you what God gave me for you. Lord bless you. Brother Rudy.
I've had that man in my life over 20 years. 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 Life over 20 years.